And welcome to another edition of the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zautke, and joining us, it is David Hobbs, of course, Formula One expert. Welcome to the show, David.
Hi there, Steve. Good to be on.
And Abu Dhabi, boy, just what a season. It turned out to be a two-car battle throughout. That when we talked earlier in the year, you know, we thought it was going to be Verstappen and Hamilton, and it certainly came down to the last race, didn't it?
Well, Steve, I mean, we would kind of expect you to come down to the last race, but the last lap of the last race, the last time a Formula One race was won on the last lap was back in 2018, was it? When, no, 2008, when Hamilton overtook Glock and won the World Championship. That was pretty exciting at the time. But of course, this was really unprecedented. And I have to say that leaves a bit of a bad taste in the mouth with the way it was handled by the authorities in Formula One. And considering the huge build-up to this race worldwide, I mean, there was a full-scale article in the London Times by Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear the day before on Sunday. Even USA Today, which you're lucky to get the results in the results column of a Formula One race, had half a page devoted to it on Thursday. So the TV audience worldwide was probably pretty big, and a lot of them must be thinking, who the hell's running this sport? Is the dog wagging the tail, or the tail wagging the dog, or what? You know, because all that going backwards and forwards to Michael Massey and race control, I thought was ridiculous.
Well, it started right on lap one. You had Verstappen and Hamilton going in the first turn. Verstappen pushes Hamilton wide. Hamilton regains the lead by going off course. There's no penalty there. And there's a lot of people, I think Jenson Button mentioned it in the post race, maybe they should have gravel in that part of the runoff area, because there certainly wasn't any penalty to Hamilton there. But then again, race control was kind of, you know, we'll let the boys race.
Max Verstappen is obviously extremely quick and will probably win many more championships. But he also is a very tough driver. And Hamilton, much more experienced now after, 14 years behind the wheel in Formula One. He is really, this year, has done an exceptional job in avoiding contact and crashes with Verstappen, which would probably put them both out right there on the spot. Imola, lap one, turn one, Verstappen pushed him off and Hamilton backed out. And that's happened 3 or 4 times this year. I mean, that just debacle in Brazil, where Verstappen used up about 4 acres in pushing Hamilton off the road, and Hamilton still avoided contact. And they all got unpunished. And so I think the steward said, well, Verstappen's done this again and again and again. He pushed the guy off the road, and Hamilton took advantage of it, cut across the corner, and kept the lead. But it's a tough call when you break all the regular norms and rules and say that we're not going to let the lap cars by. Oh, hold it. We'll let the lap cars by between Hamilton and Verstappen then, because we can't let them all through, because it'll take too long and the race will end on a yellow. Well, that's the way the cookie crumbles if you follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, you get this weird win right out of the blue, where the slower car wins the race and wins the championship. So
yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Pretty unsatisfactory.
Yeah, with 6 laps to go, you got the situation with Latifi spins his Williams, which incidentally is, I don't want to say Mercedes junior car, but it's powered by Mercedes. He spins and hits the wall. So there's a safety car, and there's like the aforementioned 3-lap cars between Hamilton and Verstappen. So with 3 laps to go, they say the lap cars cannot overtake. Now, this is where things get a little complicated too, because you have Christian Horner asking race control to move the lap cars, and then later they do with it, like you said, lap to go, and then you have Toto Wolff. I think there a lot of negative feedback I heard was the team managers, these race managers, going to Massey and saying, do this, do that. and you don't really see that in sports. You may see a coach kind of off to the side talking to a referee, whispering, trying to get a call later in the game or something. But this was, I thought, it's kind of, it didn't give a good look to F1.
It gave a very poor look to F1, and it's the second race in a row, because we had exactly the same issue in Saudi Arabia last week when they're all discussing it. And Michael Massey kind of said at one stage, well, what do you think we should do then? Well, I mean, the referee shouldn't be asking the teams what to do. Exactly. I mean, that's what I mean about the tail wagging the dog. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. This is one of those areas where democracy really should take a bit of a back seat. This is where you need kind of a dictatorial attitude. Hey, this is the rule. This is how it's written, and that's how it's going to be done. So do it. Don't ask me to fudge it today. So anyway, it takes away from what has been actually a fantastic year between Hamilton and Verstappen, and it certainly brought it right down to the absolute last lap, which was a bit unfortunate. And a lot of first-time viewers will be wondering what on earth's going on in Formula One. But the fact was that those two guys absolutely were the class of the field all day long. And Martin Brundle said during the race, he said, these two guys are just so outstanding. Here we are, only like 12 laps into the race, and they've already got a 20-second lead on everybody else, including, of course, their own teammates, who just can't even vaguely keep up in the race, which is pretty staggering, because Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez are no slouches. Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc. I mean, these are all absolutely top line guys. And before you can say, 20 laps, they're 20 seconds in front. And it's been like that all year.
Yeah, they certainly been the class of the field. A couple of things that kind of bothered me. I didn't like the, Total Wolf going, screaming on the radio, oh, this isn't right. This isn't right. Well, it didn't put Mercedes in a good light. It sounded like, I could understand it. I probably would, if I was in this position, I'd probably be saying the same thing. But, it didn't give them a good look. But, I mean, you look at Mercedes was boxed in, because your safety car situation at that time, Red Bull doesn't have anything to lose by pitting Verstappen. So Hamilton's thinking, well, this thing's probably going to finish under the yellow. So he can't take that chance to pit for new tires. No. But I tell you, it was impressive. Verstappen, of course, Hamilton was a sitting duck. But once he got by him, I was impressed with how well Hamilton stayed with him for that first half to 3/4 of a lap, weren't you?
I was amazed, because his tires were 37 laps old.
Yep.
And they were a tire that's a second slower in its best condition. And he managed to hold off Verstappen for 3/4 of a lap, who had brand new, the softest tire available on. So it was pretty, it was pretty stout effort. Couldn't do any better.
Yeah, they were, Mercedes definitely was they were kind of screwed on that. But like I said, they were really kind of pinned in. They really couldn't make another
The thing decision. Was that Verstappen had absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain by stopping and putting the softs on. Hamilton had everything to lose and nothing to gain, because as soon as he had stopped, he'd have then been behind, and then he'd have been behind all the lapped cars and again. And so it was just an impossible situation for Mercedes to kind of work their way out of through a tactical move. They had no tactical move to make.
The way the prize money is divvied out in Formula One, it's better that Mercedes wins the Constructors Championship anyways over the Driver Championship, isn't it?
For money, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get all the money. Well, I mean, they get a bigger proportion of it, yeah.
Yeah, so Mercedes ended up with 613.5 points to Red Bull's 585, with Ferrari finishing a distant third, which there were times, certainly during the year, you were thinking Ferrari's going to fall flat on its face, but somehow, even though they didn't get a win this year, they were able to get some podium finishes where you were kind of thinking, well, they're going to finally, McLaren and Alpine are going to finally outclass them, but Ferrari was able to hold them off.
Well, yeah, that's been a very good battle throughout the whole year between Ferrari and McLaren. McLaren have made a miraculous re-emergence this year, well, last year too, but this year carried it on. Lando Norris has proved to be incredibly good, and they were really fighting with Ferrari for that third spot. And it's certainly going to be interesting next year when we have the all new cars. Who's going to do what then? With hopefully more overtaking on the cars because of the way the body is configured and the air force, the downforce is going to come from underneath the car as well as the air that goes over the top. Hopefully we'll make them better in the dirty air from the cars in front. But yeah, and of course, the other thing to go back to the stewards is this constant, complete, well, the way the rules change all the time. I mean, Lando Norris, when he was supposedly pushed Perez off in the Austrian Grand Prix, when Perez actually made a completely banzai move down the outside, which really hadn't got a hope in ever working, he got a 5-second penalty. And then other guys, nothing happens at all. So, I don't get it. It's just, and of course, I was on a podcast this morning to Detroit, and the guy said then, well, there was a couple of things. They could have red flagged the race and then had a sprint towards the end with everybody on new tires, which I think would have been appropriate in the circumstances, considering so much was at stake. Or the other idea that people are putting forward is, should we have a band of referees, stewards, permanent stewards who travel the world with the racing? Which, at the moment you've got Brazilian stewards in Brazil, you've got you got Spanish in Spain, English in England, and Australian, and so on. Is that a good idea, or should we have a permanent band of stewards that travel the world with the circus? And hopefully that way the rulings will always be at least consistent.
Well, is it a Michael Massey problem, or because there's always been controversy in Formula One, no matter how far you look backwards. But I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There were some instances with Charlie Whiting, but I don't think Charlie Whiting had this much controversy, did he?
No, he didn't. And a lot of people have been saying, where's Charlie Whiting when we really need him? And I thought Michael Massey, being Australian, and the Australians are pretty straight shooters, would make a very, very good sort of race steward. But I'm going to have second thoughts now, because he's made some real bad decisions through the year, I think. And I think maybe it's time that the FIA, because John Todd, who's been in charge of the FIA, who really is where it all started, the buck stops at the top. He, of course, is about to retire, and there'll be a new, which, of course, might be a Saudi Arabian. It's either going to be a Saudi Arabian or I've forgotten his name now, but it's another European chap who will be the president of the FIA, who really control the whole motorsport. And maybe one of them will, they've got to do something about it. They can't just let it wander on like this, in this constant fog of, misapplication of the rules. It's got to be done. It's got to be fixed.
Could you put there's drivers that race to race, like we've had Danny Sullivan, I know, and Roberto Moreno, and drivers like that also, but they're they assist, right?
Yeah, that was a thing that came in a few years back, not that long ago, where they decided that they would have a permanent driver on the stewards. But the driver, he changes every race too. It's not always the same guy. And this week was Derek Warwick, who, was a British racing driver, and obviously immediately Red Bull's fingers are pointed at Derek Warwick, saying, well, he let Hamilton off on going on the escape road on lap 1 when he was forced into there in the first place. And so it's kind of difficult. Unfortunately for Max, there's no Dutch other drivers to be a judge.
No, there isn't.
Well, actually, there's one, but what's his name? Oh gosh, Jan Lammers.
Jan Lammers, yeah.
But of course, Jan Lammers runs the Zandvoort race now, so he can't be a steward.
George Russell going to be number 2 on Mercedes. How much is that going to push Lewis next year, you think?
A lot. Yeah, I think he'll be very uncomfortable presence in the team for Lewis.
Yeah.
Probably good for the team, unless of course it builds up tension too much, and we have a repeat of the Rosberg Hamilton sort of duel, which was not particularly good for the team or the sport. So I don't know. I think Russell will be very, very fast.
Well, number two drivers are always tricky. You want them quick, but you don't want them too quick. Case in point, when you look back at Michael Schumacher and Felipe Massa, that was a perfect relationship. And I think somewhat even with Hamilton and Bottas, Bottas did win a race this year, but maybe Mercedes, I think, wants to protect themselves, and their main goal, of course, is doing the constructors championship. And I think we've had conversations in the past you were one of the things that was being mentioned is if you're Mercedes, you're worried that they might lose the constructors championship because of Bottas, having an off race, because sometimes when he would be off a lot. And
like he was this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And luckily Red Bull had a problem with Perez, but I mean, Perez, he's another one like Bottas, so he can be real hit and miss.
Well, I think the Red Bull, I could get the feeling the Red Bull, Adrian Newey, who's the designer of the Red Bull and the absolute most successful designer in Formula One history by far, designing the winning McLaren Hondas, the winning Williams Hondas, winning in Indianapolis races, nearly winning the Indy 500 with Mario Andretti in 87. He is a miracle worker. And one of his miraculous things is that he has the ability to size up a driver straight away. And when Vettel came on board at Red Bull back in whatever was that, 2008 or 9, Webber was already there, and Webber was quicker than Vettel. Certainly a match for him. But as the years rolled by, Vettel took control, and Webber was left out. And the issue was that Newey knew that Vettel would be a quicker driver and designed the car to suit Vettel's driving. Newey is obviously a genius and knows the way a driver drives and can adapt the car to really suit him, which doesn't necessarily mean it'll suit everybody else. And he's done the same thing with Verstappen, because nobody else can get even close to Verstappen in that Red Bull. Not even, within half a second at best. And that's only on a one-lap deal. That's not consistent. So right. I think the car is probably quite difficult to drive. So I don't think Verstappen's got any problem with a number two ever coming in that's going to be anywhere close to it, because the car is just not right for them. And I suspect that Mercedes is probably a bit the same with Hamilton, having been there now since 2014. And I suspect that car is probably a little bit touch and go to drive. Although, as we saw last year when Russell did step in for Hamilton, when Hamilton had COVID, I mean, he was immediately right on the pace and should have won at least one of the two races he did. So I think he's going to be able to adapt. And of course, coming out of Williams, which is obviously not a great car, probably anything is a huge improvement on that, which will improve his confidence straight away. And I think you'll find in the testing next year in Barcelona, which I think they've gone back to Barcelona for testing next year.
I believe so.
Yeah. I suspect he'll be a thorn in old Lewis's side.
Yeah, I think it's only 93 days until the next Formula One race. So not a long off season, that's for sure. Well, David, we certainly appreciate you taking time out. And I tell you what,
very valuable time, I might add.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very busy this afternoon. I'm doing all sorts of things. Trying to read USA Today, and I mean, yeah.
Well, and here we are, December 13th, and I was actually mowing the lawn earlier today, took a half a day off on my primary job to mow the lawn, and who'd ever think, one would be doing that in Wisconsin in December.
Well, your little mate Guy at the moment is on the golf course playing golf with Dennis. Well, I walked down to the post office, and I must say that I thought, well, I know it's a miraculously warm day for this time of year, but nevertheless, it'll be a bit nippy playing golf, I'd have thought.
No, you can do it in this weather. It was almost about 50 degrees, and with the sun out there, you're moving. It's not bad. So,
yeah.
David, we certainly appreciate you taking time out. Looking forward. Maybe we'll do a pre-race or preseason.
Yes.
And it'll be fun to see what happens next year in Formula One. Certainly, a lot of things moving on. It will be interesting to see what the changes at Mercedes. Red Bull will be just the Red Bull next year since they're taking their engines in house. Correct?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they're taking over the Honda program, so they'll be like Ferrari, and then McLaren will keep pushing, and then you get Alpine, and so we'll see what happens with Aston Martin. So
I think next year could be a very good year.
Yeah, it should be a tighter field. Hopefully Haas.
I think
Haas
it
might
will
even
be.
score a point.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. All right, David. Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zautke. Don't forget to please like the video and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Okay, Steve.